Hello, and welcome to Top 5 Risk Avoidance Strategies for Contractors, a webinar brought to you by AIA Contract Documents and presented by Berkeley Construction Professional. Just one reminder that any education brought to you by AIA Contract Documents is not provided as legal advice. We always ask that you confer with your legal counsel. With that, Andy, take it away.
Thank you, Hasti, and thanks to you and AI Contract Documents for allowing me to present this webinar on risk avoidance strategies for contractors. Before we get started, let me offer some introductory comments about construction risk in general. I'm assuming that most of you on the webinar today are contractors or maybe architects that are working in the construction industry directly for contractors or construction managers. And just as our colleagues in the design industry understand, construction projects are inherently risky. Every project is unique, even if it's a prototype. You know, maybe it's a fast food or casual fast food building you're doing, or a branch bank, or even a gas station or something like that. Or if it's a larger building, such as a school or a police or fire building that's being implemented across a community on different sites. You know, each project is different. There's varying site and other existing conditions, local codes and ordinances, some of which can be modified between the time your project starts or the time the project was anticipated to start and the time it is being implemented, the code issue that is, and just the unpredictable nature of design and construction. Projects continue to evolve in complexity, with increasing owner expectations for energy performance and other sustainable goals, elevating standards for resilient design to withstand the impact of severe weather events and other aspects of climate change, and demands for accelerated project schedules, all within defined and often insufficient construction and project budgets. In 2020 and 2021, additional risk issues emerged due to COVID-19, such as disruption of access to construction sites, increased sanitation and hygiene and other safety-related protocols relative to trade workers at the site, which reduced capacity of trades at the site. In 2022, significant disruption in the supply chain of material system and products continued from the earlier pandemic effects, and these contributed to high rates of construction cost inflation, which likely put some challenges to the project budgets that your owners had established, again, between project inception and now that the project is proceeding. Regarding risk allocation, our perspective at Berkeley Construction Professional and our sister company, Berkeley Design Professional, is that the primary beneficiaries of the project are the owner and the users, particularly when you consider the long life of a building or infrastructure project. Yes, design firms get paid a fee for services, and contractors also earn fees and profit as a component of construction cost. But the primary value is to the owner. Therefore, owners must accept the majority of the risk on a project, arrange proper funding and financing, and establish and maintain contingencies as part of their project budget. Now, that being said, the contractors and design team are part of the owner's risk management team. You've been hired because of the skills and experience you have in order to provide services and fulfill contractual obligations towards a satisfactory result, including mitigating or minimizing the project owner's risk. Contractors accept significant risk in this process, primarily the obligation to construct the project in accordance with the plans, specifications, and other contract documents for the price agreed upon, whether that's a fixed price or lump sum, or a cost plus a fee with or without a GMP, or the price certainty through design build, this increasingly popular delivery method. Contractors are well established and experienced with strong leadership, diligent risk assessment and planning, and business management practices, including a commitment to quality construction, can attain reasonable, even significant profit in the process, in balance with the risks that they take. Berkeley construction professionals encourage our insureds to establish a risk management policy and plan for your construction firm. A risk management policy and plan is an essential element of loss prevention and a key agreement of financial success. When your risk management plan is embraced by leadership and integrated into your company's culture, it will have a significantly positive impact on business performance. At Berkeley Construction Professional, we review risk management as an integral component of business, project, and financial management. Today's presentation is one of a series of AI contract documents sponsored webinars that we have provided, and it follows a program we conducted earlier in 2022, developing a risk management plan for your construction company. And like all of AI Contract Documents webinars, they're available on the aicontracts.org Learn page. And I believe these are recorded using YouTube. So I'm Andrew Mendelson. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Risk Management Officer of Berkeley Construction Professional. I have the same role at Berkeley Design Professional. You may have seen me do webinars on behalf of BDP. I've been in the professional liability insurance business now for 10 years. Prior to that, I did 36 plus years in practice, primarily in the large firm A&E environment. Our firm had architecture, interiors, and in-house structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering. I've maintained my license as an architect, as a practicing architect. I was a project manager, market leader, contracting officer, a chief financial officer, and after the merger of my firm OWP&P into Canon Design, I was director of practice management for Canon Design for about 4 years. Put a pretty significant part of my career into risk management. The focus is clear. I served 15 years on AIA Documents Committee from 2003 to 2017. I was a primary driver of the rather significant changes that were made in 2007 in the documents family, the A201 documents family, particularly in the owner-architect agreements, as well as the A201 and the owner-contractor agreements in multiple delivery methods, such as construction management, design, build, program management, and the like. So it was really quite an honor to serve through the 2017 launch of the A201 family. Prior to that, I was a member of the Large Firm Roundtable Legal Committee for about 10 years. And currently, since retiring from AIA Documents Committee, I'm pretty active with the ACEC Risk Management Committee. That's the American Council of Engineering Companies. And I'm involved at the national level and in my home state of Illinois. Whether we're providing risk management advice for contractors or design professionals, we are of the philosophy that we are providing this education from the practitioner's perspective, largely based on the experience and expertise I have, as well as subject matters we bring into the process of this. So my colleagues in Berkeley Construction Professional are extremely skilled. We have 5 of the most talented and reputable construction professional underwriters in the country, as well as about another dozen people in Berkeley Construction Professional that support their efforts, and pretty creative, innovative, professional and pollution liability insurance policies. Those of you who have further questions about insurance, I'm going to address on it, really just overview manner in the presentation today. Please contact me and I'll put you in touch with one of our underwriters. A call out to AI Documents Committee and the AI Contract Documents Program. These really are the industry standard and have been since 1888. It's an iterative drafting process led by the AI Documents Committee, which is approximately 30 or 35 practicing architects, members of AIA, some of whom are also attorneys. We are supported by about 5 very skilled attorneys that work directly within the AI Documents program. But the reason why we've been able to be the industry standard is that we're not just looking at things from the standpoint of architects or engineers. We do a significant amount of outreach to the industry. There are quite a few construction industry stakeholders and liaisons, such as subcontractor organizations, attorneys who represent owners, developers, contractors, and the like, and a number of AIA member resources and subject matter experts. It takes several years for a contract that's been around for a long time to be updated. Recently, in the last couple of years, the construction management family, I believe, was updated in 2020 and 2021. Last year, there was an update in the digital practice documents, very significant effort. There are task groups within the documents committee that work for probably 2 or 3 years, not only considering the input comments that have been received by the industry, but then meeting with various liaisons so that we truly represent a fair and balanced set of contracts that serve the entire industry. And quite frankly, the construction industry utilizes documents at a very high volume. When you think about the owner-contractor agreements, the contractor-subcontractor agreements, payment application forms, bond forms, the A201 itself, and all the different project delivery methods that there are, there is quite a bit of activity in the construction community, and that's one of the purposes of today's webinar. So enough on that. Here's the legal notice that Hasti read. Additionally, I have some practice management recommendations that also should be reviewed by your companies and adapted as you seem appropriate. We are providing advice and again, your legal counsel that's skilled in the laws of construction and jurisdictions where you are practicing should be your go-to for the procedures and contracts that you use. So let's get to the workshop outline. It consists of 5 parts. Some have multiple parts within them. Number 1 is stay focused. Number 2 is the importance of the contracting and project approval. Number 3, the very challenging aspect of maintaining staff resources and working with firms that you know, subcontractors in particular, actively managing those subcontractors, and managing quality and project delivery. So the first one is staying focused and seeking projects that are a fit with your expertise and experience. As an example, if you're a flooring contractor and working in the residential market, be the best you can with that expertise in the various finishes, wood, stone, porcelain, ceramic, even vinyl or other sheet goods, and understand where the industry is evolving, what the impact is of other components of your project, which really come into play perhaps more significantly in commercial, institutional markets where the product options expand. There are newer products and adhesives and conditions in the environment that are important for proper installation. You really need to understand that and make sure that all those criteria that the manufacturers set up, which, if properly installed, will provide durable and long-term maintenance considerations. So, as an example, I did a lot of school projects, and there were always pressures to get a job done at the end of the summer, whether it be putting down a wood gym floor or a tile floor in the hallway. Perhaps the environmental conditions weren't right. The subsurface temperatures and humidity levels weren't right, but there was pressure to get that flooring installed. Well, when that flooring was installed without meeting those criteria, typically it would fail, and people would learn the hard way that you really need to understand what the criteria are. If you're an HVAC contractor, particularly in today's day and age, where indoor air quality is so much more important, and again, a greater focus on this since COVID and reoccupying the office and the like, there's been advancements in filtration, controls, other aspects of technology, obviously energy performance, in all the different corporate, residential, institutional environments. Understand the professional liability risk that you're taking on if you're involved in the engineering of those HVAC systems as a contractor, and oftentimes some of the final engineering is delegated to the contractors. Just make sure you are not over-representing the expectations of these new systems to the owners. Have thorough discussion with the designers, with the owners, and move forward in a manner where expectations can be managed. And finally, under the section of projects that fit your experience, if you're a general contractor working in the private markets and then seek to pursue public projects, understand the criteria for public buildings, for public bidding rather, the qualifications, the process, the need to follow to the letter the bidding submission requirements in order to be responsive and responsible in your bid submission. It's different in private work where you can submit a bid and then have an opportunity to talk through it with an owner. In most situations in the public world, you have to submit exactly as the plans, specifications, bid instructions, and other criteria of the owner are defined. We had a couple projects again in public schools where the owner had to reject low bids because they had qualifications on them and that sort of thing, and they were determined to be non-responsive and had to be rejected. So just understand that. I mean, we're in a situation right now where there is a lot of public work out there with the infrastructure acts and all those incentives, largely in the infrastructure world, but also in buildings. Maybe some challenges on the private side these days because of the volatility of interest rates and funding. So there can be a natural interest in pursuing the public markets where you haven't before. Just be prepared for what the differences are, and then you can move forward with that. So the second point here is taking on projects for which you have adequate capacity of leadership and staff. And this has been a problem in the construction industry really broadly, the design and construction industry for at least the past 10 years. So well preceding the pandemic, goes back to a significant recession in the economy in 2007, 2008, the housing crisis. And it's been difficult for firms to rebuild their staff. We, in talking to our policyholders and reading industry journals, a lot of companies are still turning away work because they don't have the adequate staff to do the projects, and particularly the leadership at the project executive, project management, project superintendent level. So as you're finding, still in general, the industry seems to have enough work out there, but the recession seems to be more slowly hitting the construction market. I encourage you to stay in touch with the regular updates that Permit Baker does on behalf of AIA. And the Economics AGC also has a regular series of updates that tracks performance, forecasts, and the like. So, it's going to be a tendency to maybe dip into a different project type that you are maybe not familiar with. Just be careful about that. You want to work with owners that you know and trust, that have the capability to implement the project type in the location where it will be built. Not all builders can build every type of projects. We did a lot of hospital projects. We did a lot of school and university projects. These are different than the projects that are done for developers, such as in the retail world, in housing, and in office buildings. That doesn't mean some of those contractors can't do 2 or 3 of those project types, but just make sure that you are confident that the type of project you are doing it fits with the expertise and experience of the owner and the expertise and experience that you have. And so you do want to partner with owners that treat contractors, construction managers, and design professionals fairly, understand fair and balanced contracts, reasonable expectations, and the like, and do not have a history of suing contractors and architects and engineers. So sometimes it takes some research on that latter point, but if you're working in a jurisdiction, in a community where you've been established for a while, you'll know about that. If you move on to other areas of the country in your region, you might need a little bit more work on that. So we're going to address that a little bit here. And the second aspect of staying focused, it's think globally and act regionally. I mean, it's going to be a natural tendency for you to want to grow your firm at some point, possibly to a new city, a new state, and the like. If you do that, you really need to know those markets, and in particular, the legal and regulatory environment that exists there. Building departments, zoning departments, planning processes, overlays, entitlements that might be necessary. They likely to be different than the hometown where your corporate office is. So you want to make sure you have people placed in those offices that understand the landscape. Perhaps you acquire a firm, a smaller company where you've got kind of a built-in local knowledge, but just be very careful about that. And again, you want to identify potential long-term relationships with owners who build multiple projects. So you're not making this investment into a new jurisdiction for just a one-off type project. If you have multiple offices, you want to develop your company policies, processes, and protocols, as well as an integration plan to really integrate and facilitate quality and financial success for satellite offices or acquired companies, as well as the home office. And sometimes that means adapting some of your company's main policies and that have been established for a while, because the new office that you've acquired may have some good ideas that could positively impact your overall company's strategies. The important thing is that they be integrated and that the offices, to the greatest degree possible, realizing there can be some regional and local differences, are working in a consistent manner. And while you're expanding, we recommend that you don't lose sight of your local market, the strength and presence that you have established. While generally there's going to be a lot, senior management effort and others into a new office, try to do that while maintaining the strength and presence in your local market. Very importantly, and our number 2 item here is controlling your contracting and project approval. Understand the contractor's risk in the risk allocation nature of the contracts. I'm showing an image of the A201, General Conditions for the Contract for Construction. It tends to be widely used. It's about a 40-page document, thoroughly describes the contractors and the owner's responsibilities, as well as the architects. I believe it's often used even when there's not an AIA owner-architect agreement used, but it has to be used with an AIA owner-contractor agreement. It sets forth responsibility for the means, methods, and procedures of construction, site safety, warranties and guarantees for the work, which is a standard that contractors accept, the warranty and guarantee standard, which is different from a design professional, which operates under a professional standard of care. So when you're in a design build project where you as the contractor are hiring architects and engineers, understand that they're going to have differences in these types of standards, and their contracts, the design contracts, are going to have to reflect that. As a contractor, you have absolute duties for the timeliness of performance, fulfilling schedule results, and the responsibility for your subcontractors in the same mean that you have in terms of your responsibility as a general contractor to the owner. So this document is really important to know, that your people know and understand it. It forms the largest part of your contract. So we recommend for your construction company a standard process for authorship review and approval of proposals and contracts. Proposals are the first step. They really set forth your intent, your understanding of the project, your understanding of the schedule and the scope of the project, and the like. And it's usually an exhibit to ultimately what will be your contract. Other exhibits to your contracts will include the construction documents prepared by the architects and engineers, and other front-end bidding requirements and other conditions of the project. Overall, that forms the bigger contract documents. You need to allow time for legal review and advice on contracts. Some of you are large enough to have in-house counsel, most do not, but really take the time to understand it, establish your own protocols and follow them and enforce them. And again, the point about multiple offices, these should be done consistently. Usually a contracting officer for a contractor is housed in the corporate office. In the satellite office, contracts and proposals might flow through that individual, but whatever you have your proposals, your protocols and policies, you want them to be consistently understood and followed. So again, the intent and parameter of the projects is important, scope, schedule, budget, project for the project budget, the construction budget. You want to identify who the other members of the project team are, the designers. There might be a separate owner's rep as a consultant, or certainly the owner's designated representative who is authorized and empowered to make decisions on behalf of the owner. That's very, very important. And there can be other consultants and other members of the construction team. Hopefully they'll all be under contract to you, but sometimes there could be some players in that realm that are under a separate contract to the owner. There are other criteria that need to be known, particularly sustainable goals. And we have a whole host of those that are available. You know, everybody knows about LEED certification, but there's also things like well building, net zero, that are higher level standards. All of these goals have impacts on the contractors and the owners, as well as the design professionals. It's not a single party's duty. They all have responsibility, and these again are defined in AI documents that really do a great job in terms of defining those goals and the expectations and responsibilities and duties of the parties when there's a sustainable goal. The use of building information modeling and other advanced 3D technology. I mentioned that AIA in 2022 updated their digital practice documents, and for the first time, there's an option to utilize the BIM as a contract document. There's also options to not use it as a contract document and that it just be for information only. But in any case, we encourage design and construction teams to work collaboratively on the use of BIM. Used properly, BIM can have a very positive effect on the efficiency and effectiveness of construction delivery, but the terms and conditions and responsibilities and duties need to be defined. Again, it's not just the architect's duty, it's not just the contractor's duty, and there's various criteria that are important as to how the BIM is to be used, relied upon, managed, and the like. Entitlements or other financing criteria can have a big effect on project delivery, particularly on new developments where there are roadway improvements that are occurring, where there might be an on-ramp, off-ramp to a major highway or something like that, or just utility infrastructure that has to be provided by the municipality or the state. These things can be factors in terms of delays in getting that done, in terms of what you are anticipating being your start date, the way you've priced the project, and the like. So, you know, you need to have those criteria defined in your proposals, saying, hey, you know, we anticipate this project starting in November of 2023. If the project's delayed, you know, for X number of months, we're going to be facing increases in material and labor, and you have to have a factor in that. So be careful about that. Have that as part of your proposals and part of your contracts. So the public approval process, as we all know, can take a lot of time with many projects, especially since really any significant institutional project, public project, a lot of people in the public are interested in it, and they're going to drive a process that could cause delays in the project delivery. So what you also want to do, particularly if you are involved at the front end of a project, if you are a pre-selected general contractor, or if you are working in any of the forms of construction management, whether it's construction management or advisor, or construction manager as constructor, also known as CMAR, construction manager at risk, or CMGC. You're going to be involved in the front end. You're going to be involved in pre-construction. But what is that involvement going to be? So the agreements allow for fill points for what you will be doing as a contractor during that very important pre-construction phase. You're going to be providing advice to the owner and the design team about logistics, schedule, material availability, maybe even input on systems selections, maybe engaging your key trade subcontractors, such as mechanical, such as structural, particularly such as exterior envelope. So this adds value to the construction process. And in the owner-architect agreements for these types of delivery methods, there's an increased duty of the architect to share information, to meet with you as a contractor or CM, so that you understand the nature of the preliminary drawings that are being exchanged, help you anticipate what's going to be coming in the design, development, and construction documents phases, so that proper contingencies in the construction estimating can be included, should be included, and that these supply chain issues that we're dealing with, if there's pre-ordering that needs to be done, whether it's materials or systems, you can have that discussion with the owner, with the architect, and make decisions in that regard that will ultimately help the project move forward smoothly. So, as I mentioned earlier, in the contract, we'll define the construction and contract documents. In the A201, there's change management protocol and approval processes. That is the submission of change orders and the process that goes through there. You do want to disclaim services that belong to others, particularly on this professional side. So when you're involved in having certain things delegated to you, such as construction steel fabrication and erection, final detailing of exterior wall systems, glass and aluminum handrails, prefabricated metal stairs. These things have been around for a long time, but that's there should be limited what you're accepting in that regard. And others, the responsibilities that belong to the owner and the design professionals retained by the owner are pretty clearly defined in A201. So let's make sure you look through that and any edits that are made to it that you will agree to. There's also the governmental agency thing as far as those entitlements and other review processes that they have. These folks have jurisdiction over the projects. Certain project types are more extensive in that regard. Say in the healthcare world for new hospitals, there tends to be a Department of Health in every state that has input and approval authority, not just over the construction of the project, but even the planning and design of it. And these obligations, these needs to have these authorizations from these authorities having jurisdiction vary from state to state. As an example, in the healthcare and hospital construction world in California, the entity called OSHPD has a significant amount of input. It tends to add a significant amount of time to the approval process as compared to some other states. You want to be able to rely on the owner-provided information, surveys, geotechnical, environmental, construction material testing. And again, as I mentioned earlier, when you're bidding public work, be responsive to the contract and bidding document requirements. You want to keep an eye on certain contract clauses, such as indemnification. This is where you're to step into the shoes of the owner and defend them, indemnify them for certain losses that they may occur. There are several states that have enacted anti-indemnity statutes or moderated these requirements to be more fair and balanced based on proportionate liability, and making sure that you as a contractor, and also applies to designers, are only responsible for that which is within your scope of services and contracted responsibilities. Limitations of liability. These are good strategies to balance risk reward considerations, particularly when your services are limited in scope. So if you're a construction manager and you're hired in pre-construction services only, and maybe it's not assured that you're going to get the job for the actual implementation of the construction, that means you provided limited services. You want to limit your liability to maybe the fees you've earned or maybe a reasonable multiplier of those fees, so that if you're not hired for the full-blown implementation of construction, you're not going to be on the hook for that risk. Waiver of consequential damages is an important clause to limit your potential liability. Consequential damages include loss of use, loss of income, and this is a big issue for an owner. So because the projects that you're doing in the institutional world or the commercial world, in the gaming world, the clause actually was, the waiver of consequential damages has been in the AIA documents since 1997 and other industry forums. It was actually driven by a very nasty claim against a well-established New York contractor for a casino project that was delivered 30 days late in Connecticut, and the casino operator was able to win in litigation a judgment of $1 million a day in losses, $30 million that went against the general contractor. That was before the days where contractors have the kind of robust general liability insurance they have now, and the magnitude of that settlement put that contractor out of business, and that had a big effect on the national awareness of it. And so AGC actually drove the waiver of consequential damages into the 1997 A201. It has continued since then, and it also exists in the design services agreement. Then waivers of subrogation. This is a clause that limits the lawsuits and claims of a party that provides property insurance to your owners, and their ability to come back after you or the architect for losses that they have paid out. So believe me, now that I've been in the insurance industry here for 10 years, there's a lot of subrogation that occurs. And this waiver of subrogation, again, which is quite standard in the A201 and the design services agreements, is common. But attorneys can edit these out. You want to make sure, if you can, that the waiver of subrogation and that waiver of consequential damages remains intact in your contracts. Another thing is you got to manage fast track and innovative project system risk. This is, again, become more frequent due to acceleration of project schedules, demands by owners to get their building online as soon as they can. And then finally, don't work without a contract. Maybe there's an interim agreement form you can use, but you don't want to be working without all these important terms and conditions in place. So, the basic principles of risk allocation are: which party can best foresee the risk, which party can best control the risk, which party can best bear the risk, which party benefits or suffers if the risk materializes. And again, the owner holds the key to this, and the contracts define that in terms of risk allocation for the contractors and for the architects. And here's what the documents look like in the AI world. You've got a basic agreement, the A101, which is the agreement for a lump sum project. A102 and A103 are lump sum with a fee, and one with a GMP and one without. There's that A201 document. And then there's a series of exhibits. The E203, which I actually didn't update this. This is now a 2022 document. That's the digital practice. E204 is sustainable projects. And A101 is a new exhibit from the 27 documents, which gets into detail about the insurances that are available to contractors and owners. It's gotten quite complex. In A201, there are basic statements regarding the types of insurance you would have to provide and what the owner would have to provide. But in A101, the insurance exhibit, you can get into a lot more detail about that, if there's going to be an OPPI or a CPPI or other type of project-specific type of policy done. So that's a document that needs to be considered. Okay, so we spent a lot of time on the contracts. Very, very important. Let's talk about staff resources and working with firms. You have to have continuity at the management level. Your project, it really starts with your project leader, whether you call that person a project executive or project principal, or whether that's your project manager. And then underneath them, project superintendents. There could be project engineers that have, on the contractor side, that have certain responsibilities. Try to keep that as continuous as you can throughout the project, and make sure those people have experience in the project type and the project delivery type. You want sufficient presence and support at the executive level. And as a general statement, this third point, and this applies to really any business in the world these days, you want to provide an attractive and supportive work environment through your company's culture. Have a vision and mission, core values, provide proper facilities in the office and in the field, and a benefits program. I mean, today's day and age, every employee expects this, and it's an investment you should make. You want to nurture your staff through training and development. And you want this to be specific to your company. There are entities that provide general training in this realm, and that's fine. But you want to make sure you look at that and have it adapted to the specific standards you have in your company, including processes and protocols, engagement in your company culture, your core values, and project delivery standards. So a very important component that maybe 5 years ago we wouldn't have been talking about too much, but you all know how difficult it is to recruit and retain talent in our industry, and you want to keep them with your company by investing in them. Show them that you care, show that you want to develop them and that you want them, if you're your high performers, to stay with your company for the long term. As far as working with firms, you know your odds for project success are going to be enhanced by working with design professionals, subcontractors, and others that have expertise and experience in the project type. We were a large firm. We did work on a larger scale, and so we naturally had strong relationships with contractors. And it was a mutual beneficial sort of thing. When we did new hospital projects, we were always hired at the same time as the construction manager. Sometimes the construction manager was hired before we were as the design professional. But in any case, you want to be working with people that, if you can, you've had a prior experience with and it's been positive. Certainly your subcontractors and your suppliers. So, if you're offered an opportunity, and maybe you're not comfortable with some of those factors, it's okay to make a no-go decision when the project client or other team members are not the right fit for your practical or strategic goals. I'm showing on the right an image of a go, no-go project information sheet that we have published for design professionals. It's on our public website. We have same sort of criteria that we recommend that the contractors follow in terms of making an informed business decision whether or not to pursue a project. So, you want to know that the design firm works in a collaborative manner. You want to know that, with the contractors and CMs and others in the pre-construction phases, not all architects and engineers get along that well with contractors, right? So the better architect and engineering project managers do, and they're very flexible and they're collaborative and cooperative. You want them to be responsive in a timely manner to submittals, RFIs, and change requests. And you want them to be processing change orders fairly, understanding that they're going to be scrutinizing them. They have an obligation to the owner to scrutinize those. And sometimes change orders can make the architect look bad, but they have to treat you with fairness. It's part of the ethics and standards of practice that architects and engineers have, not only their professional associations, but also written into the practice acts of the states in which they practice. So they have to treat you fairly. So we recommend that you proactively expand those kinds of relationships with leading design firms in the project types and the locations of your businesses. Number 4, actively manage your subs. They need to live by the same rules you do in these key areas: quality construction, diligent client service. Their contractual responsibilities and terms and conditions that you have in your main contract, the A201 and the A101, 102, or 103, or one of the construction management forms that you have, including the flow down provisions of quality management, responsibility for cleanup, coordination with other trades, that sort of a thing. One of the things we need to make sure about is insurance and the liability that they accept. You don't want to limit subcontractor or subconsultant liability unless you have similar contractual protection. So be careful about that, because any limitation that you provide that's below, like say your insurance limits, if there's something, a claim that comes and a judgment that happens between the limits of their insurance and yours, you're going to be filling in that gap, because ultimately you as a general contractor, construction manager at risk are going to be responsible for that. Your subs have to promote a safe and collaborative work environment, follow the safety standards that you have established for the site as a general contractor or CM. They should have an appreciation for the big picture, just like you should, not just limited to a certain trade or area, they should understand that they're part of a bigger goal of this project, the successful construction of a project. And it really helps them to have a broader perspective. So, finally, again, on the insurance issue, they need to be properly insured for CGL, environmental pollution, and PLI. So contractors do have professional liability insurance, professional liability that should be dealt with in a professional liability insurance policy. That has to do largely with the delegated design that I talked about earlier with those key construction components. But it also has to do with professional advice you are providing upfront in the project. Like I said, when you were hired in the pre-construction phases, you are providing professional services. Finally then, our fifth point is managing quality and project delivery. As part of those overall standards that you have established or will establish or continue to refine, robust quality standards and controls. When I was a young architect out in the field, I had the opportunity to work on some pretty significant projects in the school world. And I got particularly friendly with one of the general contractors, kind of served as a mentor to me. In a very simple statement, he said to his subs and to his own tradespeople, he said, "Do it nice or do it twice." You've also heard people say, "Measure twice, cut it once," or "Measure 3 times and cut it once." So these very simple principles of your subcontractors and your own tradespeople doing it right at the beginning, making conscious efforts to follow those plans and specs, understanding the differing field conditions that may exist, because the contract documents prepared by the design professional are not going to show where every nail goes, where every bolt goes, where every stud, or all of that. So there's going to be a need for you to interpret those and implement them in the right place. You want to foster an environment where meeting client expectations and contractual responsibilities across the entire construction team are primary. And you want your entire team to know that quality is top priority, even if it means, accepting certain, financial compromise in the short term, maybe having to redo something that is not right before the architect or owner catches it, in order to protect your reputation, client reputation over the long term. Again, this perspective of a long-term relationship with a client, the project owner, and the design team members that you're working with is very important. We want you to encourage thorough communication and sharing of best practices within your construction company. You may learn things on a particular project, and you've got multiple teams working on multiple projects. Hopefully there's a way you can share through your quality directors or other venues that you have of your project managers that what you've learned on one project can be applied to improve your approach to the next one. Consider peer reviews to be performed within your own firm, perhaps by someone who is not involved in that project. That can be on an ongoing basis. That can be at the beginning of the project as the contracts are set up and the schedules are set up, or certainly as issues occur. You've got resources within your firm that you should be able to rely on to just increase the expertise level of your entire company. And rotating the responsibility for reviewing the work to gain these fresh perspectives is very, very helpful, we think, in terms of an overall development of better quality standards, better process improvement as you're implementing construction projects now and in the future. So you want to document the project process and establish the project record. I cannot tell you how critical this is in claim defense. Okay, in the pre-construction phase, the architect is normally responsible for this documentation, preparing meeting minutes, publishing them, having a record. If you are a participant in that, you want to carefully review those meeting minutes and respond in writing to the author that you disagree or you have a correction with those meeting minutes. Once the project goes into construction, you as the contractor or CM will have the primary responsibility for this documentation, and you will have to prepare and issue meeting minutes on a regular basis, and you may receive some comments on that. So what this does is establish the project record. And the project record is the first thing that a defense attorney will ask for after seeing your contract. The project record documentation of, who discussed this, what options were considered, who made this decision to proceed in this manner, and these are typically owner decisions, are critically important. It's also important to have the project, managers and project engineers available for you, but quite frankly, the project record is even more important than the testimony of a project participant. So, it's not something that maybe a lot of people understand going into this business, but it's critically important. And of course, you have tools these days, such as, I'm forgetting their names right now, such as PlanWise and that are systems that are in place that kind of gather the documentation, have an FTP site, and the like. Procore is a name I was thinking of. It's pretty dominant in the industry, but there are others. And utilizing those systems to manage documentation, the flow of RFIs, the flow of submittals, the housing of contract documents and revisions, and these important exchanges of information and decisions through meeting minutes are very, very helpful. And so we have that available to the industry these days. We need to make sure that people have access to those records after the project is completed, in case there's in case your company decides to change systems that you're using. You need to make sure you're able to download all that information before you change the system. Very, very important in discussing the project process is understanding and managing the elevated risks. We've mentioned some of these earlier, but fast track projects and what projects are not fast track these days. They frequently require field changes that may result in unintended consequences. So when an advanced bid package is done and it's accepted and is proceeding, and the rest of the design documents, construction documents aren't completed, the chances are those subsequent documents are going to modify something in that earlier package. The owner needs to know to hold additional contingency for that. There's a benefit to the schedule time that's going to be saved, but there's a cost to potential changes of previously installed work. So we have clauses in our contract recommendations for that, so that owners that are not experienced, that it's black and white with them, but it should be black and white in the contract with anyone. Projects can have untested technologies or cutting edge design. Again, particularly with some of its, net zero buildings, that sort of thing. These are, high level sustainable goals. There might be systems, there might be materials that are being used that are not time tested. So let's make sure our owners understand that, and there's an additional risk element to that might not occur for a few years, but if the owner is aware of it and has been part of that decision, that's risk that they accept. It doesn't mean if there's a problem 5 years down the road and things are failing that you and the design professionals won't be subject to a claim, but having that documentation is critical in the project record to mitigate or at least to minimize the risk that you're taking on. So while challenging projects can be exciting, test your firm's skills and keep your firm sharp, you need to be fully prepared to diligently manage those associated risks, understand them first, and then manage them. We think you should maintain, to the extent possible, internal contingencies to deal with some of these issues that are not necessarily going to be compensable as a change order to the owner, but just realize you have elevated risks, some of which you as a contractor need to absorb. So in summary, and we're going to have about 5 minutes left if any questions came in. We've talked about staying focused on the projects that you are skilled in, that you have experience for, including as you expand your offices to other locations if you do that. Critically important to control your proposal and contracting process and the approvals, maintaining the staff resources, developing your staff, and working with firms that you know and trust. Actively manage your subcontractors and manage quality and project delivery. On this particular website, on the berkeleycp.com website, on the risk management tab, there's kind of a summary of this in a white paper mode, as well as our risk management planning section and a number of other useful resources that we have put out there for the construction industry. So we are pleased to be, kind of at the front end of risk management for contractors. So you can go to that resource for more information. Here's AIA contract documents, a webpage to learn where these webinar recordings are housed, as well as a number of white papers and other guidance documents. I kudos AIA contract documents for really dialing up this level of, particularly of contracts and risk management issues for the design and construction communities. And specific questions about those, there's an email address and telephone. And then for the online service, as far as the AIA electronic AIA contract documents and their electronic forms, AIA is very proud of their responsiveness through this website and through this telephone. I can tell you in my more than 15 years experience with AI documents, these systems have come along really, really well. They need some training, they need some experience, but the support system is there to help you. So here's my contact information. I'm based in Chicago. There's my phone number and my email address. My email address is a better one to get to me at, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have subsequent to this webinar.
Well, Andy, with that, we are over time, but thank you so much for that thorough and excellent webinar. A lot of information here. Don't hesitate to contact Andy if you have follow-up questions, or visit us on our Learn page. Andy has actually quite a number of articles that him and colleagues have been writing for our Learn page. So please visit us, and please be sure to follow both Berkeley and AIA contract documents on social media, because there's a lot of great content there as well. So with that, thank you all for joining in and staying a few minutes later. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. Andy, thank you for taking the time to present to us.
You're welcome, and thank you for the opportunity.